Hello, my name is John, and welcome to this year's Global Youth Institute.
And my name's Emma. We're going to be your co-hosts for this event. We're so excited to provide you with some content, connect some key themes, and elevate your ideas. Throughout the week, we'll be giving you the opportunity to engage with the Borlaug Dialogue. This is a conference that will give you the opportunity to learn about issues related to agriculture, food security, and sustainability.
Thanks, Emma. Throughout the week, we'll be talking about the intersection of climate change and food security, and we'll be joined by our youth team members to help break down concepts, and we'll have a segment from the Professor Morgan Day, where she will talk about key issues and really get us connected on what we need to know. We'll also have our colleague AT talk about really cool ag innovations that are happening that are addressing that intersection all around the world. And we'll be also joined by Austin, where he will be hosting What's Cooking with Austin to give us those sustainable recipes and connect us with some of the top chefs around the world. So thank you so much. Really excited to kick off this week, and we're going to turn it over to the professor.
Everybody, welcome to GYI, your first day, and welcome to The Breakdown with Professor Morgan. Over the course of my lifetime, I've witnessed the international community gather together around a hunger-related goal and achieve it. Between 1990 and 2015, the Millennium Development Goals set forward an ambitious challenge to reduce extreme poverty around the world and to halve the proportion of people who suffer from hunger. In 1990, 1.9 billion people were living in extreme poverty, living on less than $1.25 a day. Can you imagine that? And by 2015, that number fell to an estimated 836 million, a more than 50% reduction. In 1990, 23.3% of people living in developing countries were undernourished. And by 2015, that number fell to 12.9%, again, a more than 50% reduction. It's incredible what we can do. And we knew that those successes were hard-won, despite variables like rising unemployment, higher food and energy prices, volatility of commodities markets, economic recessions, the increase in extreme weather events, natural disasters, political instability. All of these things were slowing our progress. We were still able to make big movement, though. And even though those numbers were encouraging, the trends were heading in the right direction, we knew even in 2015 that the poorest and the most vulnerable people were being left behind. With many of the Millennium Development Goals met, or at least on track to be achieved, the global community set its sights on 17 new goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, every nation in the world ratified these goals at the United Nations, setting forth ambitious targets to reach by 2030. SDG 2 took on the mantle, hard work focused on food security and hunger, pushing not just to reduce hunger, but to get to zero hunger through tackling the issue of hunger at its roots, improving food access to the most vulnerable populations, improving agricultural productivity, considering growing techniques, the way we use our food and how our food systems work, and tackling economic inequalities that led to higher food prices for folks. In 2015, however, we started to see a shift in those positive trend lines, especially around hunger. And when COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2019, and since then the numbers have ballooned, with an estimated 828 million people facing hunger at a global level. That's almost 10% of the world population hungry. The overall prevalence of undernourishment, meaning the percentage of people who don't get enough nutritious food to maintain an active, healthy life, has also risen from 8.9% to 9.8%. So what does this mean? And what's driving all these outcomes? So for those of you who've participated in a youth institute, that's all of you. Remember our definition of food security. 4 different components that we consider. Access to food. Is food available? When we have food to eat, how do our bodies use it? And are all of those things happening in a stable fashion across time? COVID-19 and the ensuing economic disruptions to people's livelihoods, the economic shocks causing higher prices and inflation around the world, climate change, rise in political instability and armed conflict we've seen in the past 5 years, we have an uphill battle ahead of us. This week you'll hear us talk a lot about those 3 C's: COVID, conflict, and climate change, and how they uniquely contribute to food insecurity and how, overlapping, they create a chilling effect on the hard-fought progress we've seen. A key organization tracking our progress is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Every year, they produce a critical report, the State of Food Insecurity Report, which details our progress towards reaching zero hunger and provides analysis on what we should do to improve outcomes. FAO chief economist breaks down these numbers for us, and with only 8 years left till 2030, can we reach zero hunger? Let's hear what Maximo has to say about it.
The main findings of the SOFI report this year are not as good as we would have liked. And the reason is simple. The SOFI is reporting up to 828 million people chronically undernourished, what we call our POU indicator, which means that we have increased in 150 million more people chronically undernourished with respect to the previous year. When we look at the trend and we look at 2030, which is the target of the SDGs, our projections are showing that we will have 670 million people chronically undernourished. It's exactly the same number that we have in 2015, when the SDGs were signed. The key drivers behind food insecurity are conflict, climate change, and slowdowns and downturns. COVID-19 especially affected the slowdowns and downturns because economies, especially of developing countries, were completely shocked negatively because of the COVID-19. In this context is when the war in Ukraine happens. And what this means is that the situation is exacerbated even more. Why? Because Ukraine and Russian Federation represent around 30% of the exports of cereals. And what we understand is that there won't be only one policy. There has to be a portfolio of policies, of actions that need to be taken to create the transformation of the agri-food systems that we need. We can repurpose subsidies, of course, to improve efficiencies, to make the incentives compatible to a better nature, and also to reduce emissions for the climate, and to reduce distortions. So if not in 2030, at least in 5 years from there, or 10, we can achieve the goal of zero hunger.
Thank you, Morgan, for helping us break down those concepts. I know I certainly learned something new.
We just heard a lot about how to deliver global food security. Now we're going to kick it over to AT, who will be sharing some innovations in agriculture that will help us solve these issues.
Oh, hi there. Welcome to Ag Innovations with AT. Over the summer, I was able to visit Florida, where at the University of Florida, they took me to see the Space Plants Division. This is where, for the first time ever, researchers have successfully grown plants in lunar soil. That means they literally took soil from the moon and they were able to grow something in it. How incredible. They're also working with zero gravity technology, trying to make sure plants can grow in an environment where they don't know which direction is up. How cool is it that someday the food we eat might come from the moon or from somewhere else in outer space?
The work that we do is incredibly experiential. In other words, we don't just sit in a laboratory all day doing this stuff. We get to go to the space centers. We've been to almost every space center that there is in the world. We get to work with astronauts. We get to work with pilots. We get to take plants, lowly plants, that you would never think would know that they were in a rocket ship or a jet airplane. And we put them there and we understand that, yeah, plants do know that they are riding in a jet plane. They know when they're in orbit. The reason that we know that they know is that we studied their gene expression patterns and their metabolisms are recorded there just like they are in any other book. So we get to do things, unique things with plants, and we get to do them in unique places. We've been to the Arctic, we've been weightless, we've been in jet aircraft, and we've interacted with some really incredible people along the way.
What kind of responses does an organism, any organism, mount when you put it in an environment that is totally outside its evolutionary experience? When you think about it, none of us terrestrial organisms, including plants, has evolved in a situation where they've ever been exposed to a microgravity environment. It's easy when you are exposed to something that you know, even if you yourself hasn't experienced, if you as an organism has seen it somewhere in your evolution. If you're cold, As a human, you put on a sweater. If you're cold in the plant, you turn on a whole bunch of genes that deal with cold response. But all of a sudden, you're in an environment that you have no idea what to do with. What kind of metabolic response do you pull out of your toolbox to throw at this? You don't know. And so we're really interested in that from a very fundamental scientific point of view, is how do plants work? How do they do that when they're challenged with something that they have no idea what to do with?
There's a few ways in which the work we do, I think, truly impacts society. The first and very practical one is that plants, just like here on Earth, ultimately will be the source of food, water, and air when we live on Mars. We have to take our ecosystems and our agriculture with us. There's no way we're going to live there long term without that. To my mind also, there's a deeper thing, and that is, how would your life, how would your thoughts, how would your thinking be if you knew that things that are normally considered earthbound life forms could live on Mars? How would you think differently if there were plants growing on the moon? I think you would think that life has very, very, very strong ways of living in various places, and you'd no longer think we were limited to being on the surface of the Earth.
That was so interesting. Thanks, AT.
Yeah, definitely. I am so excited to learn from AT throughout the week.
Me too. Now we're going to head over to the chef studio for What's Cooking with Austin.
Hello everyone, my name is Austin Castillo-Leovon, and this is What's Cooking with Austin. During this segment, I'm going to be sharing with you all sustainable cooking recipes, and we're going to have some special celebrity guests who would love to talk to you all that are participating in the Global Youth Institute. Up first, we have Richard Blaze, who has an interesting tip on how to reduce sugar within your baked goods.
Hey, what's going on, students? Richard Blaze here from assorted different cooking shows that maybe you've seen on a TV or 3, including, I hope, Next Level Chef on Fox, which premieres season 2 this winter. But that's not why I'm reaching out to you, students. I'm reaching out to say, 1, thank you for the support, but 2, and more importantly, congratulations on getting to work for the World Food Prize Youth Programs. I know that you got a big conference. You got a lot of work ahead of you here in the upcoming days. And I want to say congratulations and thank you so much for the inspiration that you're giving me to do my part when it comes to fighting global food insecurities and hunger. So I know you're going to get to it. You got a lot of work to do. Congratulations on everything that you're doing for our industry. And here's a couple of tips. This one's coming from my upcoming book that has mostly to do with vegetables. How to get people to eat more vegetables. We know that vegetables are so important when it comes to nutrition. Use meaty seasonings on your vegetables. Carrots with barbecue spice kind of makes them taste maybe like barbecue ribs. It's a great way to get people who maybe don't like eating vegetables to eat more vegetables. Use pepperoni spice on beets and you get all of that nutrition, and people think that they're these meaty flavors. Also, maybe you're trying to come up with recipes in the baked goods and dessert side of things where you want less sugar and a little bit more nutrition. Well, use cinnamon and vanilla and spices that you associate with sweet things. Cinnamon, vanilla. What do you think when I say vanilla? Ice cream. What do you think when I say cinnamon? Donuts, exactly. But cinnamon and vanilla, they're not sweet. They're associated with sweet things. If you want to cut down on sugar, keep things a little bit healthier, use those ingredients that we associate with sweet flavors. Listen, students, have an amazing conference. Congratulations on your work. I can't wait to hear about what you're doing. Until then, stay safe. Stay home if you want to and you need to. Most importantly, stay hungry. Of course, not physically. You're trying to feed the world, but stay hungry mentally so that you can feed people globally. Congratulations. Talk to you soon.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that video with Richard Blaze. I know I did, and he inspired me to cook these cupcakes with cinnamon and vanilla to reduce the amount of sugar that I would originally put in them. Next up, I'm going to be sharing with you all a sustainable cooking recipe, one of many that we'll be sharing throughout the week. First up is roti. You're going to sift together flour and sugar and stir in vegetable oil and water. Once you get to that doughiness, you're going to knead it until it's firm. Shape into round balls, and then you're gonna coat a little bit of atta. And then from there, you're gonna roll out each ball into a small rounds on a flat surface. You're gonna heat a tawa, or you can heat a saucepan. Cook the rotis on both sides until golden brown. You generally wanna do it 1 minute on each side until they reach that golden perfectness. All right, hope you all enjoyed that recipe. I am going to enjoy my cupcakes and share the rest with the family. Until next time, let's roll out.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Austin. Austin will be checking in with us every day to share more food tips and tricks and to introduce us to more of his chef friends. So John, what else do we have on the agenda for today?
We're going to hear from Samantha Power, who's an administrator with the U.S. Agency for International Development. She's one of the world's leading anti-hunger advocates, and she's done a lot to bring resources and money to areas with high rates of food insecurity, like the Horn of Africa. So really excited to be able to share her words with y'all.
I'm Nick Merritt. Very good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good to meet you.
Thank you very much for sitting down with us. You were in the Horn of Africa recently, where I believe it was last week. You came back last week, where there are many people in Ethiopia and Somalia and Kenya who are approaching very close to a state of famine.
I would say that the situation is as bleak as any I've seen in my lifetime. And, you know, I've traveled to a lot of places where there's been a concentration of suffering. The worst consequences of the food crisis haven't yet been felt. We are on the cusp of something very, very grim. That's never happened in recorded history, to have 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons. And so the livestock, often in famine conditions, that is who dies first, and then that ends up being something of a canary in the coal mine for humanity. Now we're at almost 20 million people who are going hungry and who are dependent on this emergency food assistance. But you know, other donors are stretched pretty thin. Other countries are stretched thin because the food crisis is a global food crisis, because Putin made this war on Ukraine starting in February.
Has the outlook gotten better or worse?
All of the damage done up to this point by Russia has created such acute needs in Ukraine that the fixed sort of foreign assistance budgets or emergency assistance budgets just now have more claimants. And the last thing on earth we could afford is another failed rainy season, but it actually looks as though, you know, again, it's not for sure yet, but it looks as though, unfortunately, the Horn of Africa is likely to face its 5th failed rainy season, which 4 is a record. 5, I don't know what you call it when it's just shattering everything that's come before. What we're not going to do, any of us in the administration, is just allow the Russian Federation, which is still saying it's not at war in Ukraine, to blame the latest spike in food and fertilizer prices on sanctions and on the United States. And so, you know, if that is the latest version of their disinformation campaign that they've chosen to pursue, we're going to respond to that. We're not going to just allow more lies to be perpetuated.
Emma, it's Roundtable Day.
That's right. During roundtables, students will have the opportunity to present their research to experts and their peers.
And we can't wait to hear your solutions to addressing global hunger issues.
So good luck on your presentations and have a great first day.
And let's rock and roll.